we will go back into our order. So, minutes. Can I have somebody please move that we receive the May general meeting minutes, please? Councillors Hanson and Plum. All in favour? 7-0. Any alterations, amendments or comment? There being none, can I have a resolution to adopt or confirm, sorry? Arthur, Plum, those in favour? Carried, 7-0. Any councillors or officers have petitions to present? There being none. Can I have a resolution that the deputation we received from Desert Channels be received? Councillor Peoples, Councillor Rogers. Those in favour? Carried. All right, councillors, the budget. Thank you for all of the workshops that you have participated in, stretching back to November. And the compilation of this has taken a fair bit of work, and there's been some significant decisions. But now we have a series of resolutions, 19 in all. We move to the statement of estimated financial position. Any comments before I receive that? I shall just have a motion to receive that, please. Councillor Plum, Councillor Arthur. Those in favour? Carried. Differential rate categories, 4.1.2. Recommendation is very clear. Can I have someone move that, please? People? Councillor Gleeson seconds. Debate? Those in favour? Councillor Peoples? In favour? 7-0. 4.1.3. Differential general rates levy. Councillor Plum moves. Second. Councillor Arthur. Debate. Those in favour? 7-0. Minimum general rates. Mover. Councillor Hanson, seconded Councillor Rogers. Debate. Those in favour? 7-0. Sewerage charges, 4.1.5. Mover. Councillor Plum, Councillor Arthur. Debate. Those in favour? Against? Carried. 7-0. 4.1.6 waste utility charges. Mover. Councillor Rogers, seconded Councillor Plum. Debate.
Mr Mayor, do we have figures on whether we're over or under allocation for the towns to hand? It's good because we've got, in this again, we've got the allocation per household, but we've got nothing there for excess water.
For waste?
No, this is for water. Oh, sorry, waste. I've gone off too early. Sorry, Mr Mayor.
What we were allocating, whether it was
sorry, no.
square metres at the landfill or
Yeah, I'm ahead.
So, any further comment about or any comment about waste?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Is this a major change? Is there something different here?
Yes. Oh, well, there's always the
percentage increase.
So it's
So, Mr. Mayor, we've always had the two charges, one for the waste management charge and waste collection.
Yeah.
the fees have gone up.
The fees have gone up. So
Why?
the waste management is to the cost of the landfills and the collection is actually the bin collection.
It's gone up by. I didn't bring that supporting material with me. Sorry.
15% was the figure.
In order to recover the money that we're losing, because at the moment we're not covering cut. It hasn't been lifted enough in previous years. We're losing tens of thousands of dollars. Same as sewage. It's costing us more to collect it than we're collecting. That was what we went through that in detail. We've landed on that as an end result. That was 2 workshops ago we did that, not even the last one. You were there. You're on the Zoom.
Okay. So we've increased that by 15%, and the other one we've increased is
Sewerage by 8%. It's only marginally more than the rates. But that budgeted, as you'll see in a future document here, that budgets us to be cost recovery.
Yeah, okay, but I notice that that's in our corporate plan too. We're not going to be able to cost recovery on every car.
Well, they're the only things we charge on waste, sewage and water. Oh, sorry. The other one that's in here to be cost recovery is for rural services relating to 1080 provision.
Yeah. All right.
So currently, water recovers cost,
Yeah, no, that.
but the other 2 have been allowed to fall back where our expenses don't meet our revenue.
And QTC advised us that as long as we're covering our costs, we're doing well. Because there's a lot of councils that have got substantial losses on their water, waste and sewage. So they view cost recovery as
The standard.
That's the standard that
Not
we
really.
aim for.
Yeah, okay, but
So we're not aiming to make a profit, it's aiming to make sure we cover our costs.
yeah, cost recovery on a lot of things we're not going to get there.
We will on these, unless our costs blow out. Like if our costs change from what we're used to, this is a known upfront cost. We know we'll. So the waste is still a little bit unknown as we move through the process towards whether we decide to contract waste collection services for 3 of our accounts or.
That's an increase of $45.
That sounds roughly right.
It's a bit more. 15%.
So it's gone from the waste management charge has gone up $13.
Yep.
And the waste collection charge has gone up $30. Yeah. So if you're getting your waste collected, it'll be $45. Thank you, Rick. Any further comment? I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Carried 7-0. Water. Right.
Now, Mr. Mayor, right, I'll scroll to the right place on the agenda. Do we,
No, it's an adoption, so I don't know about it until we've discussed.
through you, Mr. Mayor, do we have figures on how close we were to our allocations for the last 12 months? Or do we know that we were under with
Just hold
the
it.
rain that we had?
Is our town allocation?
Yeah, just for the individual towns.
Yeah.
Councillors, happy to take that, and if we can have, if you would like, I can move that we move on to 4.1.8 and come back when we get the information to hand. We'll just leave that one sit while we chase that information. Do you want to formally resolve that we move? No, we'll just leave that, leave it to one side. We'll scroll down to 418, please. Muttavara Rule 5 Brigade, separate rate. Councillor Peoples moves. Seconds, Councillor Plum. Those in favour, 7-0. I'm not helping help us as much here because they're going to need to be involved in this one as well. You're going back to it now.
So, Mr Mayor, Arrowback, so this is at the 26th of May. Arrowback water usage 405, and the licence is 420. Muttavara used 245, and the licence is 315. Alpha 164, and the licence is 300. Jericho 51, and the licence is 68. And Barcaldine 1,585. The licence is 1,360 plus 400 for the rec park, so 1,760.
And sorry, Mr Mayor, that was to the end of May, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, 26th of May.
Can you just go Jericho's allocation again?
51.
51/68,
And
Mr
68
Mayor.
is the licence. So everyone is under.
Pretty good. Surprising.
For you, Mr Mayor, does that allocation restart at the end of June?
Yep. Less, in Barcaldine's case, less 250. Because the seasonal allocation drops from 400 to 150.
And that's another thing that we've discussed in the past too, Mr Mayor, is that the need for some of these allocations to be increased because they've been set in place a long time ago. That, you know, with development and different things, we need, you know, we've spoken about trying to increase those allocations.
And conversations have been held.
Yeah.
With the Neon Department of Water and their local officers about the process for that.
Okay.
And there was no negative feedback. The process was explained, and it's possible to do it once. We've got to be able to substantiate the need for it, but once that's done. So, Councillor Arthur, that's the
Yep.
data. Further comments? I had one as you were reading me up, but I didn't want to interrupt. I can't think what it is. Sorry. So, any further comment?
Mr Mayor, just the water, it's the 2% increase in water.
Although that 2% is what I believe has got us into the problem that it got us into in so many other areas of the budget. You know, councils are advised what the cost index increase is each year, and for so long our council, like so many others, has just simply risen by that. But that's a statewide index that I don't believe truly reflects the cost pressures relevant to Western Queensland. Now, the one area where we are at a significant advantage to others is the cost of our water. So it's not surprising to me that we've been doing okay in the water sphere with a standard 2% or 1% or whatever the annual increase is. But in the procurement of so many other things, including waste, you know, because our wages element, our plant costs, and in sewerage, because of the energies required to process it, it's not surprising to me, with some introspection, that we've fallen behind so far in trying to keep level pegging our costs with our revenue. So the fact that in 3 of the 5 communities we don't treat the water, there's minimised pumping requirement because of the artesian nature. It doesn't surprise me that we can break even with what we're charging to what it's costing with a 2% rise, but unfortunately that's not necessarily the case across other utilities that are more labour intensive perhaps.
So really we probably in future budgets got to look at different services and what's unique. Some might not require the 2% or whatever we're going to go up across the board. Some might be less. Some are definitely going to be great.
Some are going to be greater. I think this is off topic to this resolution, but I think the more relevant, the starting point for increase should not be necessarily the state indicative index. It should be a more, once again, we don't have the resources to, model this internally, but a more localised index increase is more relevant, perhaps, than a statewide one. The statewide one's easy. That's why councils do it. Okay. Do I have a mover for the resolution to adopt the water utility charges? Councillor Plum. Seconder. Councillor Gleeson. Formal debate. None. Go to the vote, please. Those in favour? Against? Carried 7-0. That now takes us to 419. You'll see here, following the last budget workshop, and obviously you saw it when the budget was presented, the inclusion of the quarterly rate notices. I felt that we needed to give consideration to that, given across the board with the valuation changes and council's focus on utility charges, that we may need to look at the spread of our currently twice annual payments to quarterly to lessen the shock. Shock's an incorrect terminology, but for want of a better phrase, I'll use that, to lessen the shock of the increase that some rate payers will see. Of course, other rate payers are seeing their rates slide backwards by $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. So it's a chicken and egg scenario. So I proposed here, and it's very easy to amend out, I asked if the officers could consider including quarterly rate notices. I do have I've since had some conversations and there's opinions on both sides of this. There is a concern currently if we issue 4 rates notices instead of 2, we instantly double our costs effectively. So are we, and so therefore the negative side of that is, are we actually going to cost ourselves a part of the small increases that we're trying to be prudent about? So I asked the officers the possibility to go for a single issue of rates with an instalment option on that, so they can either pay once, they can pay 2, 3 or 4 times, still qualify for all their discounts, but it's actually halves our issuing because they're only getting posted and we're only preparing 1 rates notice. On top of all of that, there is the extra work potentially involved in reconciliation. I'll throw to the officers for more advice here in a minute, but I just want to frame the discussion that there's definitely pros and cons to it. There is the physical issuing of these rates on a more quarterly basis. There's the perception that may be received in the community that we're constantly putting our hand in ratepayers' pockets, because every time they turn around they're getting another bill, even though it's the same annual amount. It's the concept of them receiving a bill quarterly instead of just twice a year. And the other point to consider is that our rates are regionally very competitive, and we don't have a substantial aged debtors, like our rates outstanding list is not, it's almost not like non-existent. So The propensity of our ratepayers to pay is, I guess what I'm saying, is obviously to date has been matched, and we're not smashing a massive increase into them like a 40% rise in rates and utility charges. You pointed out, Councillor Peoples, that waste and sewerage have gone up a little bit out of step with the rest of the rates, but in real dollars terms, it's not an overly significant amount of money. So perhaps I'm being overly protective or overly concerned about something that may not be really an issue, and we're creating a whole bunch of work that has cost attached to it. That if we, and sorry, with the single issuing, I don't think our software is yet at a mature enough level, would that be an accurate assessment, to issue a single rates notice with quarterly instalments?
That's correct. Although the software, because New South Wales only rates once a year with 4 payments, so they issue a bill at the start of the year and pay it off in 4 instalments. The software company obviously has that software they use in New South Wales, but with short notice, they wouldn't be able to, or we wouldn't be able to use it. It's that short notice. If we gave them 12 months notice, definitely
So with that in mind, and I'm going to throw to officers to add any further information to the discussion and then for your input and decision, we have in previous years issued a one-pager or a document that explains the fees and charges, what you're eligible to pay, the time frames once this resolution goes through that you have to pay for. I wonder if a first step towards quarterly rates, if we think for cash flow purposes for both council and ratepayers, it's the better long-term option, whether we take this year to get our software in order and our process right, and on that explaining the rates document, we put to, because it's already an option. People don't need to wait until their rates notice is received for them to come and prepay. So if we explain to them, look, you're free to contribute to your rates on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. If you want to qualify for your early discount, you have to have 50% of it paid by this date and the remainder paid by this date. So, anyway, I am ambivalent to it, but I've raised it to either side of the debate. I'm open to, and I just was mindful that in some areas rural rates are going to go, some rates notices are going to see a $6,000 to $7,000 rise, and in some town businesses are going to see between $800 and $1,000 rise. They're very limited. They are on the absolute maximum high end, and there's not many of them, but I just put it there. Officers, Brett, Jenny, anything to add from a process point of view?
And, we have trialled this one time, 2014. We did trial it for 1 year, so it can be done. There's no reason why it can't be. We can't rate 4 times a year. It's just the cost of printing and enveloping and sending out, posting the notices. The software now allows for emailing of rates notices. So potentially, if we promote that, then we can reduce that postage and printing costs. So yeah, and the only other cost to the staff is just the phone call. So whenever you issue rates notice, that triggers people to ring up and either complain or with queries on their notice, or make changes. So instead of having 2 lots of phone calls a week, you get 4 lots. But otherwise, it's doable. Either way, it's doable.
Okay, councillors, with that long-winded introduction, sorry, but I just wanted you to be fully aware because we haven't workshopped this concept as a group.
Just quickly, Mr Mayor. I think getting 4 notices would be better than having one booklet where you get around each one over a year. I think getting the notice would probably be important to people saying, oh, yeah, my patient. Otherwise they shut the booklet down and they get to, I've got to pay their second quarter and then they will be disconnected. I think getting the notice is probably important.
Whether you get it in the post or on email,
Yeah.
like we've got to try and lower our distribution cost if we're distributing. How many rates notices and give me rough idea. I beg your pardon?
2003.
There you go. We're sending, that's costing us at least in just in pure postage terms, that's costing us not much change out of $5,000 a year. When so many of the people that receive them would be one of the very few paper-based invoices they receive for the year. Nearly everything else is electronic.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Paula, is that paper ones? So then there's others, there's probably others that are getting email, but yeah, that 2,000 is all paper. Yeah.
But your point that you're making is it whether it's, however, you're saying that a quarterly receipt of advice, whether it's hard copy or electronic, will trigger them to pay it rather than getting it annually and forgetting.
Yeah.
Bear in mind there are some councils that send one annual rates notice and that's it. You pay the whole lot in one go. So I don't really want to see that.
Through you, Mr Mayor, for mine, I would be supportive of, as you said, a transitional period. So in 12 months' time, we go to the 4 instalments, but just for the next 12 months, if we just stick to the 2, but then encourage people around those same time frames, that we're halfway through the rate year. If you want to pay half your rates now, then yeah, now would be a good idea. Just to give us time for the software and changes to get into place with the actual staff.
We can do, so the software allows us to issue 4 rates notices a year. Now, you don't, that's fine. It's only if you wanted to issue only 1 rates notice and allow them to pay 4 instalments, that requires different software.
But Mr Mayor, if we go that way to 4 instalments, we instantly double our costs, and a cost we don't really know at this point.
We just printing and postage costs at a minimum are doubled.
Yeah.
At a minimum, just them two,
Yeah.
without staff labour costs.
And I think we just have to be mindful of jumping to a decision when we don't really know how much it's going to cost, whether it's money and time.
I totally agree, Councillor, in that, from that point of view. Part of the overall direction of this budget is to take a more prudent and ensure a more sustainable financial footing is secured, and then if we go and give part of our increased revenue away in administrating something that may or may not even be required by the general public without their feedback. Councillor
Through
Hanson.
you, Mr Mayor, just on doubling that cost, you're probably going to actually more than double, because staff are going to be doing it 4 times a year rather than twice a year, which is means something else they were normally doing is going to have to be done separate again. So the staff costs alone will probably be more than double. But I'd be more inclined to try and push emails over the next 12 months and see as many as we can on that email system, which reduces their costs rather than increase their costs.
And allows for a bit more flexibility in that you may be able to do 1 rate notice with 4 instalments, but then constantly hit them with a reminder every quarter or something like that, you know, so that you can go, here's your rates notice at the start of the year, and then 2 weeks before it's due, here's an automatic electronic reminder, your period for the early discount expires next Wednesday or whatever. Councillor Gleeson.
We don't want to increase any costs. That's we're trying to draw down a budget where we don't want to waste money, so we don't want to increase any costs. So I'm more in favour of what you're just alluded to there, with trying to lean towards more electronic, even though there is things out there that still have to have some posted. But,
That's correct. Councillor Plum?
Yeah, I'm the same. I think that we gradually, like Councillor Arthur said, gradually build on this for change and get the emails in there and then,
Councillor Peebles?
Mr Mayor, I presume we were doing this because of the new valuations and we were sort of easing the pain a bit on some of those hiring rate notices. So I thought that's why we probably need this year, but either way I can go.
Councillor Rogers?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think that because everyone does have the opportunity to pay early, perhaps we could, get the word out there through the Galilee Gazette, or even just send a letter to all the households and try and encourage them to go by email, it'll reduce our costs. But not only that, just let them all know that they only need to ring up and arrange it to pay it off throughout the year. If it is going to cause any financial stress, get on top of it early before the bills. So if we get out there and consult and let people know what they can do, it might save us money as well as them.
There's, officers, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a portion of our ratepayers that are very aware of the ability to prepay rates. We're carrying a significant sum of money already for the new year, is that correct?
Yeah, over $100,000.
In rates for the new financial year, so... No,
No.
they're in advance.
It's in advance.
We haven't even handed the rates down yet, and there's some people collectively have paid us $100,000.
And through you, Mr Mayor, that then ensures that you get the discount, because if you're in credit, when the notices come out, you've already claimed that discount.
Plus, you're also getting the benefit of it in this year's tax return if you're a business. That's I would suggest, the predominant reason for a lot of it. No?
A lot of it's employees, isn't it?
Okay.
They get deducted from their pay, so they've always got the rates paid.
Oh, very good.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that might be another thing that we can promote on to the business, like through the community, that there could be some business owners that are unaware of that.
The ability to do that. Yeah.
That's tax.
So we don't have to formally amend. No, we haven't moved or seconded as councillors. Are we happy if we drop July and January out, and therefore August and
August and February.
Different dates.
February?
Mr Mayor.
Sorry, Sarmad.
The dates, Mr Mayor, were 13th of September.
They were the 13th of September to be issued.
Yeah, and the 11th of February 2022.
Okay. So they'll be issued on the 13th of September, so we can delete all of that if you like. Debbie, that from the 19th of July on. We'll change that to the 13th of September 2021.
And
Is it?
11th of February 2022.
And B will then change to Summit.
And these dates will change to 25th of October 2021 and 16th of May 2022. Yes. 16th of May.
Respectively. And then go to
So the discount period.
discount dates will change to
25th of October and 16th of May.
Through you, Mr
Two
Mayor.
equivalent
Yeah.
employments of the-
Some it's just two.
Four.
Is there a reason we use Monday? Not Wednesday, or to avoid a weekend with people paying early, or so, oh, I meant to pay and it didn't clear, or is there?
It was, it used to be a Friday, but then people that paid on Saturday and then
Yes.
it come through Monday. And you didn't really know if they paid on Friday or not. So
So Monday's okay from that
Monday's
perspective?
good, and it also allows, so property owners on the weekend, they do their books, they can pay the rates,
So that,
it's there Monday.
yeah, so long as it's there in the account Monday, it qualifies for the discount. It doesn't have to be paid before that.
So if it's paid on Saturday and they can show a remittance advice that they paid it on Saturday, is that acceptable? If it's not there on Monday?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Councillor Peoples, you said you were either way. Are you comfortable?
Yep.
I think I've read the majority are going to go to 2 and look at this, look at some other options. Any discussion around that amended resolution? Has that changed the resolution?
And then through you, Mr Mayor, operationally, we'll just do some
No.
advertising around that, the other 2 quarters,
The other two
and
quarters?
some information about the ability to receive your rates by email and pay early.
Pay early, prepaid, instalments monthly, all of those options, yeah.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Do I have a mover? Councillor Hanson and seconded by Councillor Arthur. Debate? There being none, all in favour? 7-0. Interest, 8.03 compounding daily. That's a percentage figure that's told to us.
Maybe that's the maximum that we're allowed to charge.
Resolution? Those in favour? Oh, no, sorry. Mover, sorry, I haven't moved it yet. Councillor Arthur, Councillor Gleeson. All in favour? Against?
Or was 4, sorry, Mr Mayor.
Carried.
10 on. I moved it.
Rates concession. Somebody move this, please. Moved by Councillor Plum, second by Councillor Rogers. Debate. All in favour? Carried. Councillor Gleeson, are you in favour?
In favour.
7-0. 4.1.12. Concession for non-profit organisations. Resolution. Councillor Plum moves, seconded. Councillor Rogers. Debate. Councillor Gleeson.
Mr Mayor, council grants the concession for the full rebate. Is that full rebate? And these non-for-profit don't pay any rates?
Only general rates, they still pay for their utilities, so water, sewage.
To
Waste.
second part of the question, for those people applied, the Country Women's Association applied for this, or have the council just picked it out of that?
They applied initially, and then they've become a rolling over document. It's been a legacy issue for decades.
It's a legacy that's, unless someone knew, like, the bar called RSL applied this year, because they've converted that building into a clubhouse. But otherwise, they're just traditionally been the organisations that have been given a concession.
The Tree of Knowledge Development Committee Incorporated, is there 2 parcels there too, obviously?
Yep.
2 assessments.
Further questions, Councillor?
Mr Mayor, I just want to bring that up to clear in my mind how the list was obtained. Thank you.
Those in favour? 7-0. 4.1.13. Concessions for water utility charges. Do I have a mover? Councillor Hanson, seconder. Councillor Plum. Debate. Those in favour? Against? Councillor Peoples.
The Barkle and Aged Care Independent Living, is that's the units up the top, so they don't pay any water rate?
They pay 50%. This is a 50%, not none. I'm not sure which assessment that's for.
Yes, that's the units.
Yes.
They also have a second-hand shop. House.
That's why I wasn't sure which one that was for. Oh, sorry, that's over on there. Yep. Your vote?
Yeah, no, I'm in favour.
7-0. General rates exemptions. 4.1.14. This is for showgrounds or horse racing, charitable purposes or religious purposes. Do I have a mover? Councillor Plum, a seconder. Councillor Hanson, debate.
Mr Mayor, do we have and it's probably not a question for now, but do we have a ballpark figure of how much these exemptions, maybe for next year's budget process, just to make sure that we're happy with either the money that we're not making or the money that we're not recovering?
I also missed, sorry, that Lean for a cemetery is in this as well. I have no idea as to...
No, that's what I mean. It's not a question for now. It's long-winded and possibly difficult to fish out in a short period, but just with next year's budget
Very
process,
easy to calculate.
yeah, it might be worth...
We can provide that figure.
Yeah.
Probably the more, I mean, this is only the tip of the iceberg because state government doesn't pay rates on any of its properties, so there's probably a lot more properties that...
We don't have any choice with them,
Yeah.
as opposed to these.
But Mr Mayor, just so that we've...
No, that's right.
Because they're exempt under the Act, even though it's you still need a resolution, but...
The Act states in some of these cases that we have to levy them. Happy to get you that information offline.
Oh, with next year's budget process is fine, Mr Mayor.
Question?
No, I'm not.
Mr Mayor, I have to ask a question about the race courses, all three race courses. Why would they got to be exempt?
They don't have to be, that's your choice today.
I'm asking.
Sorry, it's under
That's one that is compulsory.
local government acts, land that is primarily used for showgrounds or horse racing. Exempt.
Are exempt or can be? No, it is exempt, must be exempt, is it?
Is
Yes,
exempt
is
from
exempt.
general rate. It's by resolution of council, so I don't know why you have to have a resolution if it's stating that it's exempt. I suppose it's you're identifying the land that you want that fits into that category.
I guess there's a process there. If you don't actually exempt every assessment notice, that it then must be issued. So I guess that's the only reason for it. But yeah, we don't have any choice for that one, council. I'd suggest if that's the case, the supporting information there reads that none of this, we have any choice, none of it over the whole lot of it. The only way we'd have a choice is to redesignate our classification of, say, a recreational ground to something else. If it started undertaking a commercial activity, for example.
We own this one here, we'd be waiting ourselves.
Yeah.
If we own the one here,
Yeah, don't even know if we own it, do we? It's on land we manage, it's actually the state.
Reserve for showground and recreation.
We don't own it either.
Well, it's state can't do nothing with it either.
It's not possible to rate it.
The council exempts differential general rates, Mr Mayor, so that's,
They still pay sewage, water and waste.
still paying the sewage.
Although the previous resolution granted a significant portion of these a 50% reduction in water.
50% reduction, so the 50% reduction in water and
The water charges, it's totally discretion of council. There's nothing in the act about you have to give them a discount.
Mr Mayor, I just had to ask the question because just about everywhere there has got used council facilities in some way with roads or footpaths or some costs. Okay.
Those in favour? Against? Carried. 7-0. Pest animal bounties resolution. These have not moved. Councillor Gleeson moved. Seconder. Councillor Hanson. Debate. Those in favour? 7-0. Register of commercial, statutory and cost recovery fees. Few changes through different elements of this. The predominant ones will be the addition of charge for labour and or any materials required by landholders who are undertaking 1080 wild dog baiting programs. Currently, until this financial year, council has provided meat free of charge and RLO's time, labour and equipment. The statutory and cost recovery fees register is adopted. That will move to the same basis as our RLO's cattle tick clearing procedures in Alpha, where they recover the costs. So if they do still if a landowner still requires meat to be provided, they'll pay for the cost recovery of that, as they will pay for the RLO's time to attend and undertake the baiting, the injection of the baiting. There were other adjustments to
Increase in participant fees for town commons.
and in NDIS fees.
Can I just make a point there on those town commons, Mr Mayor, please?
Yep.
They've got to, correct me if I'm correct, $4 now?
Yes, please.
I don't think they need to keep going up much more than that now, but
Well, they haven't gone up a fair while.
they go up every year. They've gone up to 2% or whatever.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's right.
But I think once you get to $4, I don't think we need to keep rising. That's just a point for next year's budget, isn't it?
They're $4 for cattle, horses at Era,
Yeah.
but so they should be too.
They're paying $6 now.
Sorry.
They're paying around $6 now.
Well, I think the horses are $6. I think. Sorry, just let me find that.
Sorry, was council fund?
Their cattle, they're paying up around $6 now.
Still with all the feed about, they're still paying $6.
Your
Oh,
cows
at
and calves are $9 and $10.
At least.
Were.
Ah,
Ah,
at least $6.
It's like price of fuel adjustment doesn't come back. I haven't seen it come back in the last 8 years anywhere. Even when it rains, that's might drop a few cents, but yeah, cow and calf units, but anywhere from $9 to $11 is standard rate. That's why I think 4's pretty generous.
Very generous.
Councillor Gleeson.
Mr Mayor, just want to ask a question about the stock rate adjustment permit. Our town common now is up to 4 and 6, 4 for cattle, 6 for...
Sorry, I'll save you a conversation here. We don't get to set these fees, they're set by the state. We're in a very long running debate with the state to change that, but that's not our fee.
Thank you.
But that fee
Oh, it's
Councillor.
horrendous.
Thank you.
There were some other minor changes. Council point out back in the area that deals with food licences. As a result of COVID, last year we waived the annual renewal fee. That has been restored to the same level, plus 2%, as it was pre-COVID. So that's a $159 figure. That it's not a new fee. It's just restoring a COVID relief measure. That's correct, Brett? Yep. Sorry, I interrupted you, or I spoke over you then. You were pointing out another.
That was just the tents and marquees, we've changed that fee. The bus hire we've used for the two different sizes of buses. We also we had fees for the race course in Barcaldine and the showgrounds in Barcaldine for the users. And yeah, the housing rentals, we set a separate fee for government rental of our housing.
So explain the housing rate, please, Greg.
So we have a rental for our employees, and then we have a different rental for members of the public.
Yep.
But then the government department rents our houses, we introduce a fee for that as well.
It's higher than the other two.
Thank you.
Comments? We haven't moved yet. Any further commentary around that? Do I have a mover? Councillor Arthur. Do I have a second? Councillor Plum. Debate formally. Noting your concerns, or not concerns, but observation around future movements of the town common.
Yes, and also the housing. We have been using some of the housing to attract probably teachers and I can think police. Is that going to affect us attracting those people into our smaller towns?
Still cheaper than they'd be paying in some cases to do it commercial, to do it privately, like with the private sector. It's not me.
I don't think we won't affect them, but the rent's still reasonable.
Okay.
We've got because of the tight supplies, governments have, not that we don't want to attract them, but governments have got more of an ability to ease the housing pressures in these communities for their staff than they choose to enact. Like at the moment, they're predisposed towards getting rid of their own stock, renting, so that they don't have upkeep in the capital expenditure. They've just got a fixed price, whereas that takes a number of houses out of circulation that either our staff or members of the general public can rent or have available. It is a significant distortion in the market, to be fair, in communities like Alpha. So it's a real balancing act there. Of course, we want those public servants to be there in the community, but we don't necessarily want the state to abrogate its own responsibility towards housing either.
Yeah.
When they're letting their own houses fall down or selling them off and entering into the rental market at the expense of suitable dwellings for locals.
Understand all that, yeah, but I don't want us to have a reduction in our school with a couple of teachers or something because the state will sell their houses and we're not going to provide houses because of a rental increase or something.
Well, on the student-teacher ratio, that's what determines teachers, not housing. They have to provide on the ratios that they've got. So
yeah, but we've provided housing for teachers now too because they haven't got houses. So it's not just on.
no, but they won't not bring the staff there if the houses are there. They've got to find accommodation for them then. They've got to build it all. Like, if there's housing available, they'll take it, won't they?
Yeah, but they're not going to build a house just because they need another teacher. we'll see how it goes.
Did the government just, Mr Mayor, build a house in Aramac?
Sorry,
Is there a new government house in Aramac?
for the hospital.
which has less staff than the school.
Yeah, well, they only have 2 staff and they've got 2 houses.
That's my point.
Hmm.
They couldn't get one, so they built one.
3 years ago, they actually have 3 houses and rent a council house. So they have 4 houses and 2 staff.
The health department do. They own 4 houses for 2 staff, and they still rent
own
one.
3 houses and rent one of our
Oh.
units.
I still think the fees are not to the point that the state's ever going to look like. There would be people who undertake that who would look at it and think that's infinitesimal compared to what they're paying in other communities to rent housing, even other communities close to us. That housing comes at a considerable cost to us every year. We're short of putting it up for everybody. We know the state has an obligation to put those public servants there and the propensity to pay. We go and lift the rental across the board to help us keep on the upkeep of the houses. Then we hurt people who may not necessarily have the same propensity to pay, like our employees or others. Now, rentals wouldn't cover what we're spending in special operating maintenance on a lot of these houses over a period of 4 or 5 years, let alone any 1 year.
No,
Put to the vote. Those in favour? 7-0. Debt policy 4117.
Mr Mayor, the policy is that for 2022 we do not intend to borrow, and for the next 9 years we do not have any planned borrowings. The second page gives you the future expected balances over that period. So
Doesn't mean that we can't borrow, just means that we're not forecasting that we want to. Questions?
No, I have a question, but it's been answered in the budget meetings, Mr Mayor, about the capacity to pay that, especially one of those loans out early, or so there's no capacity at all, even.
you can, Mr Mayor, you can pay the loans out, but you just pay a fee.
But do we save money? Like
Because interest rates have dropped. So they've locked in that interest rate. So they won't borrow. So it will cost. Potentially, if interest rates go up, there could be a saving in some of the lower rates. If what we're paying is less than what the market rate is, we may get a dividend for breaking the loan
It frees up the money for them to borrow to someone else lend.
at a higher rate.
Correct. It's got to go up a long way for that one you're worried about, though.
Yeah, well, because the interest alone that we pay on that covers, well, 3 of the others or the bottom 2. That's $115,000 a year that we pay in interest.
And the council that made the decision to borrow that money got that, they'd have thought that that was all the Christmases that come at once to see an interest rate under 8%. Now it's hideous. It's more than 6 times the rate of our last loan.
When the QTC spoke earlier before the meeting, I thought with the level of state and federal debt, they might be interested in getting some of that money back earlier, even if there was they didn't get all the interest, but then they're probably working on the principle that over time they get more money. Not more money earlier, but less over the long term.
Yes. Our debt, you make a good point, because our debt is actually the state's debt. Even if we borrow commercially, even if they approve us to borrow commercially, it's still debt attached to the states.
And we can give you that figure. I think it's the 30th of June they give us those. Yeah, they give us the market rates of all their loans, which is the amount we have to pay to break them.
Any questions, council people? Do you have a comment there? No? Those, mover please. Arthur, seconded Gleeson. All in favour? 7-0. Budget support documents, 4.1.18. What did I miss?
No, just thinking there along councillor Arthur's line, is you could borrow 600,000 at the present rate, the one at the old rate.
Yeah.
That's right. We could, with interest rates so low, you could borrow a lot of money if you were allowed, but the state, you've got to go through the state, they wouldn't allow it.
Plus, council peoples, we just moved that we're not going to borrow next year. Or we don't have the intention to.
Okay, financial reports. These are those that support the budget document itself. Very detailed, the significant portion we've got in front of us. Do I have a mover? Councillor Arthur, seconded Councillor Hanson. Debate.
Mr Mayor, it's not debate, it's a comment. I think some of our exhaustive budget workshop have limited the comment and discussion in the meeting just for the viewers at home.
I was wondering how we were going to explain that away when we were asked there. Why don't you disagree with anything? You're right.
Especially those first couple of motions, it was just a comment, not a...
No, it is a valid comment, but the more exhaustive steps we took to undertake the budget planning, it probably means the more settled, whether we slightly disagree or not, but we've arrived at a position that we're more aware of a lot earlier than perhaps we have in previous years, especially around the things that are most likely to be controversial, which is your rates and utilities charges, notwithstanding Councillor People's comments, and also your capital works. And the capital works is all but exclusively funded, so it was only a matter of aligning priorities over the next 3 years. It's probably a little bit like anticlimactic for just about everybody, but we've had some adoptions, notwithstanding last year's even, so it has so far been. But that only is testimony to the work that councillors have put into understanding these documents that you're approving today, before today, and the work the officers have put into compiling them. I haven't even finished yet though, we've still got 2 to go. We haven't voted on this one yet. Councillor Gleeson.
Just a couple of maybe trivial questions. On this document we're looking at here, we've just got the Tree of Knowledge Festival is $40,000, and then in a further document down the right now it's $30,000.
It's $10,000 in kind. One's a cash contribution, and the other one's the total contribution to the event.
Total and cash. With the there's lots and lots of items there with coordination costs or administration costs. They would be on paper. Are those costs doubling up as into the staff wages, into the wages on a different page? Are they doubling up at all? Might be a confusing question, but we've got a document there that says 125,000 coordinator costs. That'd be labour costs, I imagine. That's 125,000 doubled up on the paperwork.
Not doubled up. It shows the reverse entry to it. So, I'm not going to answer that. I know the answer to it, but Fred.
So the budget is prepared on a by function basis. So, like it's not presented as wages, telephone, electricity, or you know, typical types of accounts. It's presented as the function that we provide basically to the community. So, yeah, so those coordination costs under, whether it's under transport or events, they would, yeah, mainly be wages, yes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether they were duplicated at all, because there's, professional governance, and just a point of interest, professional governance, the executive cost is 1.2 million, and then the employee cost is X amount.
So the executive team are not costed to anything. So that's district manager level up. Their wage costs in those other areas is not directly reverse attributable. Whereas other staff, everyone from district manager level down, their timesheet, I'm really starting to go out on a limb here, but their timesheets every minute of every day is costed to a element that then appears where you're referring to, that coordination or the staff contribution to that project, whatever it is. So the district manager's director of works, although that's a bit of an engineering, it's a slightly different area. Deputy CEO, they're not time costed. They just, well, it's impossible to do it because they work on too many different things every day. But the staff, so that you won't find a reverse entry for the executive costs, but for the staff costs, that is broken up by those 5 functions. Every job they do, whether it's cleaning toilets, putting signs out on the road. Some of the labourers would have 5 or 6 or 7 different job costs every day. It's a relatively exhaustive process. Even the grader drivers, if they're working on a flood damage job and a road maintenance job and that. So it's not a double up in that there's a saving or a overspend. There's got to be the reverse entry, so that if the job cost is $1 million, well, an element of that is wages, which appears to offset the total wage bill for the 12-month period. Councillor Peebles.
Mr. Mayor, in the, what do we got here, the Christmas trees for Bark Hall and $20,000, was that a regional thing or just?
They should be regional.
Yeah.
Is that a special operation?
Yeah.
I think that was decorations, was it? I'll have to ask Jenny that one.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that was to have like one tree that you can put up and take down.
In each town?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just got Barky. I thought it was regional.
But it wouldn't be, no.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that was just by Colton.
That's just the one.
Yeah, that's just that's the cost of them.
And that's in 2023
Yeah.
projected, so
And
obviously next year's budget, all these would,
Be reviewed as to whether they stay in or get spread out.
and the special maintenance on the house in alcohol, was that one?
there's quite a number of houses in Alpha that need substantial maintenance.
And we still got a general maintenance budget in here for all of our houses?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary maintenance.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you for pointing out, Brett, that we do indeed have 3 years, even though obviously this budget is dealing with the 2022, there's clear signalling to anyone who bothers to read it of the out years of the budget. So there's been a power of work going to this budget that should, if we've been prudent in our planning, very, very, a lot of assistance to future years. Funding available, of course. Any further questions? Do I have a mover? Sorry, I have a mover already.
Mentioned the LRCIP
we haven't. No, that's correct. But we also have 1.5 budgets to spend it in. We have half of this budget year and the full entire 22-23 budget to spend that allocation. Okay, to the vote. Those in favour? 7-0. And the big one.
So, Mr Mayor, based on all the prior information, council has to adopt its budget, which must include all those items that are listed there. So you've got your 3 years financial statements, then 10-year financial statements, 10-year financial ratios, the total change in rates and utility charges, your revenue statement, and your revenue policy. So they form the actual official budget approval.
Question, Councillor Plum?
No, I don't have a question, I was just going to move it.
Move it. I'm happy to take your move. Seconder, Councillor Hanson. Comments or debate? I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Against? 7-0. That is our final budget resolution. Councillors and staff, thank you very much. I'm absolutely certain that there were elements of that budget and in the preparation of that budget that decisions were made that were difficult, perhaps unpalatable, perhaps not the preferred part of the decision-making tree was reached. There is significant, and I note the observations of Councillor Peoples, there were significant price rises that it is important that we're not seen in either the light of a tyrant trying to make the cost of living too difficult in Western Queensland, or seen in the basket case light of failing to run our business units and our costs to the point that we are unable to operate effectively without external assistance, if not taking over council, which is also a bad look for our communities and a bad outcome in my opinion. So it's a very fine balancing act. That budget that council has just adopted is probably the leanest use of council's own revenue for capital works in the history of the amalgamated shires. The comments made by Anthony from QTC about getting councils using this period of time to get our house in order financially, I think is especially true here. The need for it was substantial, as we identified several months ago, but I'm immensely grateful for the power of work. There was a few decisions that have changed tack along the way, things around plant acquisition I'm thinking of, right down to even today's meeting, the chop from four times a year rates back to 2. That has required a considerable amount of time done, and so Matt, I know that you've borne a big heap of that work, so thank you very much for providing very good support to councillors to make their decisions, and obviously to our senior team, to Anna and Brett, for facilitating our meetings and ensuring that the options were always discussed and presented. Thank you very much. Well done, councillors. Agenda item 5.1.1. My report. I move that my report be received. Seconder. Councillor Gleeson. It's a little bit short. This is only 3 weeks between meetings. Those in favour, sorry. 7-0. yeah, any questions for anything that I've been doing or done? Or,
Through you, Mr Mayor, what was the Barcaldine Regional Economics Opportunity meeting? Who was that? What was it?
so periodic, monthly, the CEO and I meet with Sue McCosker from State Development Queensland, just to keep the state up to speed with area projects that are happening in our area, so that they're across it. Obviously, a topical one that takes up most of their time in those meetings these days is the renewable energy hub, because of the state's considered interest in that. But we also refer to other things from time to time, such as the pending banana trial in Aramac and power and resource sector issues. It's just an opportunity for the state and the council to stay on the one page. They're a relatively quick catch-up. They usually last for about an hour. And the three things that I just mentioned were the three things that we discussed at the most recent one. Councillor Gleeson.
With that groundwater research, did that conversation come up have anything to do with the helicopter that was flying over?
No.
No, different.
No. When I attended the National Resource Management meeting in Brisbane last week that LGAQ coordinated, there was a presenter there from QUT who's undertaken some significant groundwater research in the Gold Coast Regional Council area, and also on the other side of Tamborine Mountain, a few different locations there. They have the reverse problem of ours with the water tables dropping, and they're trying to identify recharge points and what's the sustainable volume of water to be extracted from within the table, from within the basin long term, given the flows, because there's a surface recharge refill very close to the source of the water. So completely irrelevant at first glance to what our demands might be, but I mentioned to her that we might be interested in the reverse, where with the capping of bores, we're seeing water levels rise, and it's getting uncomfortable in some areas for some people. Old bores that haven't flowed are about to start again. In fact, even our town water usage in different places like Alpha and Jericho, where we've got, bores, not enough water. I wondered, she has a significantly large team within QUT, and we have that MOU with QUT, so I just met briefly with her to see whether there might be some any advantage in doing a bit of research out here to help inform our advocacy or lobbying, as Councillor Peoples referred to an hour ago about the need to perhaps look for an increase in water. Well, if we can go with a science-based reason to say, we need more water, and we've done the research to indicate the water's here and available. So, no, it wasn't generated by anything happening on the ground here. I did mention that work was being carried out, but it wasn't the reason for the chat.
Mr Mayor, the information document that comes out from our senior officers, the odd question that might come up through there, when do we answer those?
There's a couple of different formats for that, but I'll ask Anna to answer that.
Yes, on the cover, you can provide feedback to me as to if you want some additional information, if you'd like it to be discussed in the council meeting, or if you'd like to have a discussion outside of the council meeting on any aspect that's put forward in that report. So if you just fill that in and send it back to me, or just send me an email with the information, we can action it and have it happen.
Okay, I just had a couple of questions that probably you'd answered during the council meeting today. Is that a format that we're going to use, or do they all want to get back to you in writing?
If you go in writing, then they can still come to the council meeting for everyone to hear the answer. It just gives the officers a chance to be better briefed.
Okay.
Councillor Gleeson?
Adam, do you mind if I add to that?
No, go.
It was only last night that I wrote an email directly to Anna and asked the question about the engagement of a community officer. We have a coordinator, and I asked the question, why do we need an engagement officer as well? And Anna replied back to me. I know I didn't ask for it to be over the whole meeting because it was late last night when Anna and I spoke about it today. So that's...
Yeah, that's one of the 5 questions I have too.
question? Or?
To answer it here. Yes, so it's an existing position that we had. A staff has resigned, so we're looking to essentially fill the role. But prior to putting it up for advertising the role, we do consider internally whether or not there still is a need for that particular position. In this case, we have done a lot of, the role covers events, predominantly our regional events, and also that can be events that council runs, but it can also be events that are hosted here in the region that require a fair bit of liaison and support between council and the organising body for the particular event. It's communications, that's both internal communication within the organisation as well as external communications, so like producing Galilee Gazette and our Facebook pages, as well as our, we've got two internets essentially. We've got an internal internet site as well as an external internet site, and it's about maintaining those. And we also have some community engagement aspects roll up into that as well. And tourism is another area that that particular role takes on. So the workload for one individual officer is too great. So that's why we require a second officer to provide some assistance. So if we want to reduce those numbers, we have to look at what services we want to reduce in that particular space, because we can't ask one officer to work voluntarily in excess of her allocated hours under her certified agreement, because otherwise that will introduce other potential claims down the track as well.
So through you, Mayor, does that involve helping people grant write or do grant writing as well? No.
No, that's not part of that role.
Any more questions for me? No? 521, Council Information Correspondence. You see the Drought Resilience Program correspondence from local federal member. Given our resolution 2 meetings ago regarding the special nature refuge, there's a response there. There is the Get Ready Queensland program. No action required on anything of them. Would council, is no decision required, but is there a feeling that council would like for somebody to follow up with the Australian Monarchist League with respect to celebrating Her Majesty's 75 or whatever it is, Diamond Jubilee, however many years that is? That's more than that. Platinum, sorry. Same colour as the hair. Sorry, Brett. Inappropriate. Would you like us to follow up and see whether we do anything in that space?
Mr. Mayor, might be an opportunity for a community group to have a morning tea or a high tea and cucumber sandwiches to raise some money for Cancer Fund, or like we have a Great Australian morning tea and all that sort of thing. So.
May need a different type of culinary delight if our chief engineer is to attend. He may not partake in cucumber sandwiches, but look, I'm happy. We're not committing to anything today. If council was stridently opposed to doing it, then I wouldn't waste our time. But if you'd like us to reach back out to them and see whether we can facilitate some sort of event, or a series of events. It need not be one. It could be 5. There's 5 communities. It could be one in every town. Okay, we'll follow up and we'll go back to Mr. Rippon.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, item 6, the letter about the federal assistant grants. We got that last month.
Oh, it just keeps coming. Well, each of us get a different one. Yeah, it is effectively a double up. I think the one that we tabled last time was one written to me, and then Paul's written to Anna this time, I think. I'm not sure. But yes, it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah, no, I just wasn't sure whether it was a double up or whether it was, again, important.
No, well, it's important. It is vital.
Well, it is important, but whether it
so
had more to it.
Has joined with North and Southwest Rocks in funding ACE which is a consulting company, to undertake a review, sorry, AEC, to undertake a review of the methodology and propose alternatives that would be more advantageous to our area. Council itself is not contributing funds, and I didn't object. That report may or may not be ready in time for Council to use it as the basis of our submission, but partaking in the process will at least allow us a glimpse as to what could come out of that. So we are going to be submitting direct and indirectly via another, so that if we're not totally comfortable with the choices that come out of that review, it's not like that will be the only group speaking for us. We will definitely be tabling our own report or our own submission on this to the grants review. Also just want to note item 5 there, the St Joseph's Primary School acknowledging the allocation of funding and their decision to allocate that equally across every student. It may not seem substantial, but it probably is for some people, so well done to them for a pretty prudent decision there, I thought. Okay.
Mayor, just going back to
Is it his? You keep talking, Brett, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, the number 3, the Get Ready grant as well. We need to decide how we spend that money. It's $8,720, but that's sort of promoting disaster awareness in the community. So last year we bought some message boards. We got a year before we did the Telstra Whisper system. We bought the batteries and that to hand out. So we sort of have to come up with new ideas each year of how we're going to spend that money and promote disaster awareness with that throughout the community.
I think that, yeah, we're not going to come up with a decision today, but I think a focus on educating kids would be a good, perhaps, step, maybe by some of the schools. You probably get a more captive audience than you do when you go in your community, because everyone out here is pretty well resourced. But there's a bit of an element about public education of children around various disasters and connecting emergency service dots for them, because there is a special officer within QPS in the region that administers this, so getting someone along in a uniform and understand, you know, at a child level, and obviously that's difficult when you've got 3 to 12 within your council area. What suits a 17, 18-year-old is not relevant to a grade 2 or grade 3 level, but yeah, it's just another slant on it that I think pays dividends in the long run. It's not an immediate return on investment, but I think in the long run it probably sets us in a better spot as a community and gets them engaged with us.
Last year we did the little booklet.
Yep. Which has been relatively well received. I've had some good feedback about that. Can I have a resolution to receive the report of the information? Councillor Arthur and Councillor Gleeson. Those in favour? 7-0. No more comments? Okay. The plan. As we commence discussion, before we go to the wording and the material substance, Councillor Gleeson, I'm just wondering if you are comfortable with the artwork and photos that have been selected. The photographs that have been selected.
Not all.
Sorry?
Not all.
Which ones?
There should be more emphasis on, there's one there of, there's only one there of colour. We're in sheep and cattle country. There should be more emphasis on sheep and cattle. I truly believe.
there is the trucks on the bottom of the transport page, cattle trucks. Okay. Does anyone else have any other comments? So that if need be, we can look towards that, just in an artistic framing space. I picked on you, Councillor Gleeson, because I had seen your response, so I wasn't singling you out.
So I haven't responded to that first, I haven't responded to the first one.
Councillor Arthur, were you about to speak? No. Okay. That's noted. Thank you, Councillor Gleeson. All right. It's there. I'm not going to read through it page by page, but Councillor Peoples, have you got anything you'd like to discuss? Well, actually, sorry, I will leave because two councillors have provided feedback and I've taken a fair bit of it on board, but I've still yet to see an alternative. On the values page, accountability, both Peoples and Gleeson have commented about their concerns around the statement, we will do what we say we will do, at the end of the accountability value. Have you got an alternative to that, Councillor Peoples? We discussed that yesterday and didn't really resolve that.
No, I just think for other councillors where I'm coming from is that quite often we'll say, I'll just pull something out of the air, like we might be going to spend $1 million on shipping the water from the sewage plant to the football area. We run out of water in Alp and we've got to change our priority, so we've got to spend $1 million. So we can't always do what we can say we're going to do because of unforeseen challenges that we might have. So I just say, we will do what we say we will do with the resources available or something, or we will never do what we say. We can't always do what we say we will do. There will be times when something happens that we've got to change our plans. And it will happen a fair bit.
Councillor Gleeson, you commented as well about that.
Yeah, I feel the same. I really do. Mr. Mayor, I feel the same. We will do what we say we will do. I could just word it down slightly. We will endeavour to try or something. Because, as Councillor Peoples just said, there will be things that we say that we're going to do that we won't be able to do, that we'll be taken out of our control.
I guess, does that mean that we need to be more aware, more spatially aware, more financially aware, more secure in what our statements are, and a little perhaps more guarded in our decision making to ensure that our promises are not promises, they're statements of fact. Not as an individual, but as a collective organisation. I don't mean that no councillor should ever promise to do anything for anyone, because not any one of the 7 has had the power to make it happen. It's a collective decision. I just wonder whether that permeates then from the top down within our organisation to ensure that there is, bear in mind this is part of a definition for the phrase accountability. And I think our feedback from members of the public and staff, advice I've had is that accountability is a key area for us to perhaps pick up, step up, improve from our status quo, and following through on our statements would be a big part of that. So perhaps the phrase is not to your liking, but I think my thought of it is the intent needs to be that the public can have confidence, and our staff and our external stakeholders, that effectively we will do what we say we will do. I mean, it's very almost crude terminology, but it's there, I guess. But in your hands, councillors, we're at the pointy end of the wedge with it, so if people would sooner see it amended or just stop at decisions, we can always delete those last 8 words. without massively changing the intent, in my opinion.
Mr Mayor, I think it needs to stay as it is. I think if we put words like endeavour, it gives us too much wiggle room in the public. If we say, your point is well taken, we need to be very considered about what we say we're going to do, how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it. And if something pops up that is out of our control, it's not an excuse, but it's a reason as to why we haven't done what we said we were going to do. The issue is when we say we're going to do something and we just don't do it. We need to be accountable for stuff that is within our control. Stuff that's outside of our control, whether it's state or federal or weather related, then I think the general public will cut us some slack there. But it's just the stuff that we don't do just because we run out of time or for whatever reason. But,
Changed our mind.
But changed our mind. But on our decision, we need to be accountable for what we say we're going to do. I think words like endeavour just create too much wiggle room, and the public will look at it and go. And it's about accountability. We need to be accountable.
Councillor, please.
We can easily delete endeavour. We take responsibility for our actions, behaviours, performances, decisions. Like, that's saying it pretty plain, it's pretty blunt that we will take responsibility.
You could add, in that sense, we will take responsibility for our words or commitments, some other word, we'll take responsibility for our words, actions, behaviours, performance and decisions. That's a better way of presenting it.
I'm lost. Sorry, Brett. Can you say that again?
So instead of we will do what we say we will do.
Yep.
So we will take responsibility for our words, actions, behaviours, performance and decisions. You didn't want to use the word words or commitments or
Promises.
another promises.
Maybe you want to say promises, they're choices.
Decisions.
You're chairing for a second, sorry.
We take responsibility for our choices, our actions, behaviours, performances and decisions. And then say the last bit off, which is one extra word in it, our choices, which puts that responsibility back to us.
Have we got a decision where we're at with this
Did
one?
you catch that, Mr Mayor?
No, sorry, I left the Deputy Mayor to chair it.
My suggestion was we will take responsibility for our choices, our actions, behaviours, performance and decisions. Leave that last bit off, just put our choices in there in the start.
For the
Isn't choices and decisions similar?
Through you, Mr Mayor, it could be perceived that a decision is a decision of council.
Whereas a choice could be a choice from an employee to do something irresponsible.
It could go either way. I do understand
Yeah.
where you're coming from, Councillor Plum.
Councillors, before Gleeson and you were the two that's most significant concern here. Does the amendment proposal to choices and deleting the last 8 words sit okay with you?
Doesn't make.
Yes. Mr. Mayor.
You were keen to stay.
Yeah, want it to stay.
Yep. Councillor Plum, which way are you?
I like what councillor Hanson and Gleeson are there, yeah.
Councillor
Take it
Rogers?
out last.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think that I like having it there, but it's not going to, I'm not going to be heartbroken. It's taken out, but I don't see any reason,
So
anything wrong with it.
you're in favour of it staying? Like in all democracies, majority wins. Councillor Hanson, it's your proposal, so I'm assuming you want to see it choice and delete the last 8 words?
Yeah.
Then that's the way it's going. 4-3. We will remove the last 8 words and insert choices between our actions. right? Councillors, do you want to vote on that amendment? Are you happy, Councillor? Do you want to vote on it?
Oh, Mr Mayor, I'm going to accept the council plan.
Yeah.
If there's some grammatical changes, as long as it
No,
doesn't really
there'll
say
be no
anything.
need to report that. I was just letting everyone know that I was in favour of it staying as it was as well. Right, where are we at? Any more feedback on any element of it? If we move into generic information, we can leave community priorities. Councillors, obviously this was identified by the community. It's been put together there. It was no more thoughts?
Mr Mayor, I
Yes.
don't want to be trivial, but in our region, quality rural beef industry since 1860s. I'm just wondering whether you really should put a date on that. 1860s, because I know for a fact that the old local homestead where I was born and bred was born in 1850 something, and they were settled there before that.
So do you just say since the 19th century?
19th century,
19th century, really.
Oh, no.
The 1800s is the 19th century.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm happy with that, councillors, no objection. Right,
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm just wondering that information on the,
region at a glance.
region at a glance, is the rates and levies and charges figure correct? Because I thought it was 7 something million. Like, it seems like maybe it was from a while ago. I'm not sure.
Is that after the discounts applied?
Maybe it is.
Right, we'll check on that. Right, community priorities, strategic themes. We've got 5 themes. We've discussed that. Community services, transport, economy and governance.
Mr Mayor,
Councillor.
under services, we continue to provide quality communities support services on a cost neutral basis.
Yep.
But we can't do that by,
Why not?
we're providing banking services that aren't cost neutral.
No, community support services, so that's NDIS, CHSP.
That's all it refers to.
That's yeah, that community support services. That's exactly.
Yeah.
That's that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so those 5 things then refer to the next 5 pages. Community.
Do you take any questions?
Mm.
When you get to the economy and you've got in measures of.
Oh, sorry. No problem on community page, because I'll just progress through it, trying to do it in order.
The rates, levies and charges, that was 6.8, but it's with the increase in, the extra increase is now 7.0 million.
Well done. You picked up an extra 200,000 for us, Councillor Rogers. We'll be forever in your debt. Thank you. So, community we're comfortable with? Services we're comfortable with? Transport we're comfortable with?
I think I put on mine actually that we need to find some way of getting cheaper flights into this. They're just ridiculous at the moment.
You did. We've inserted the phrase affordable at your request. So we advocated to maintain public transport by rail, bus and air and continued upgrade of the state road network. You added the addition of affordable, so we've put affordable in there. That was actually your word, we didn't even make that one up.
Is that my word?
Economy, you have some issues here.
Yes, just in measures of it says 2 or 6 points down, projects are no longer managed by council.
All costs are fully recovered from third parties.
Right. So what's that mean? What are we going to do there?
Well, the way that the system, so the position collectively from local governments, that's the statewide position. We're telling the state either you take over responsibility for them or let us cover our costs to administer them on your behalf. That's the statewide position. LGAQ has it, Ag Force is on board with it. The only ones that are not on board with that position at the moment are the drovers. It's trying to put the state in a position where they either charge what it costs to have cattle on the route, or they take over responsibility for running and administering them, which it's their land, they can do that if that's what their prerogative is. But at the moment, ratepayers are paying for a thoroughfare, like a highway, and the state's abrogating its responsibility substantially in that respect.
Yeah, I understand all that, but I was wondering what the solution might end up being. You know, I don't think the state's going to come to us and say, well, here's a few $100,000 a year to run the stock routes. So
We think there's a strong chance. Councillor Britton is spearheading a platform that would identify a revenue source for the state to be able to do that.
So we're looking at finding ways for the state to fund us to run the stock routes.
Correct.
Right.
Yep. And Councillor Britton's been running a long-term, Councillor Britton is the Mayor of Boulia, and he's been running a campaign and has now got significant support behind some levy models that can be applied to different elements of the community, statewide, to similar to the ambulance levy concept. So that's still in its infancy. The state have withheld. The state went, as an election promise to the last election, promising to release their review into the costs and charges. So even just the revenue that we could collect from through travelling stock, as well as the confirmation of primary and secondary routes, so that we could let some routes, you know, the watering points that aren't used on secondary routes could be returned to landholders, or, you know, consolidation of costs on smaller unused routes, which is not really an issue that Buck-Haldon has much of, but there is in other areas such as Central Highlands and Banana and North Burnett. They have substantial network of minor routes that are never used, and they're trying to keep the watering points up to scratch, for example. So there's a whole host. It's a very complex issue, but the state have promised to review that, and we're waiting with very keen interest to see that review, and that will form how. It won't be Buck-Haldon going alone, to also answer your question. We have to work in harmony with everybody, so it's a genuine effort to see the massive cost pressure of stock routes relieved from local ratepayers and shared on a more equitable basis. Or fully accept responsibility by the state, which we doubt that is likely to happen, but it wouldn't be an impossibility.
Okay, well, that'll be fine. The other one that I've got here is the, don't know how you word it, but the maintenance of our staff levels for the economy of all of our towns. That's something that was very strong at the amalgamation transition, and I think it's something that we need to try as a council to maintain moving forward also.
With a suggestion?
That council council maintains staff levels against future challenges or something.
Requirements of the challenge, I believe.
Because we're going to have challenges, especially if we get, well, we'll have financial challenges, we'll have mining challenges, if, you know.
Pressure from the resource sector.
Yep. And we will need to have something in, I think we just need to have something in our corporate plan that we work hard to maintain our levels of staff numbers so that we can provide the service and do the job we've got to do.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Plum.
Council people, I think that we need to get back to the employees that they need to step up and have some pride on what they do and to keep their job as well. You know, like it's all right saying we're going to keep our employment up, but if they're not doing their job or they're not stepping up, then they're a bit costly.
Yeah, I've got nothing to say about how they're doing the job. We're just talking about getting our numbers up in the next 4 or 5 years for the economies we have down and some of the challenges we're going to face. I don't have a problem with the job they're doing.
I'm just drafting something for you, Councillor.
Through you, Mr Mayor, while you were doing that, could I just ask a question?
You can chair the meeting if you like while I'm doing this, and then you can ask whatever question you like.
I was just going to ask Anna, what was the community feedback on the plan? Did they have any ideas of anything that they wanted added, or what was their feeling about the corporate plan?
So we actually got a higher number of responses than what we had probably anticipated we would receive. A lot of the responses would fall more down into our operational planning level rather than our corporate planning level. There were a few areas that they had picked up in the plan as well, so I've taken those on board and incorporated those changes. So my plan from here is to actually respond to each stakeholder that took the time to provide feedback and let them know how we'll be taking into consideration their feedback that they've provided, because they have given some great ideas about how we can potentially outwork some of our strategies, but it sits down more at that operational level.
Yeah, it wasn't anything that really contradicted. It was a how-to, really, how to do what we've already probably drafted. Didn't get a lot in the space of cultural heritage stuff, which I was not disappointed. I was just keen to see whether there was a considered approach to that, but it is what it is. Sorry.
The changes that they suggested to the actual corporate plan, the ones that were in regards to the plan, what were they?
So they're more around the timing, so that 1860, the original date that we had in there, and also I think through all the amendments that we made, an extra 3 went into our area of the region as well.
Yeah.
So, a suggestion, Councillor People.
Can I just, first of all, Mr Mayor, to Anna, is your replying to all them, I think that's commendable, to personally reply to each of those, but that's great, but can we just have, when we do something like that, the responses, can we just have a quick look at that? It's just a brief of what some of the community are saying to us, if we have that, please.
Councillor, would this fit? I don't know whether it's acceptable to other councillors, but would this fit for you? Council employee staffing levels commensurate to requirements for service levels and community expectations.
Yeah.
Community expectations and service levels.
That'd be what, sorry?
They could be counterproductive to each other. The service level we maintain might not be, like how often we grade a road or how often we mow the lawn might not necessarily be what the community expects. That's what I'm thinking of saying.
Or more importantly, their expectations may be at a higher level than the income that we receive to do those activities. So if we're looking to provide a balanced budget, we've been required to have a look for some efficiencies within the organisation. We are going to have a look at how we do our activities in order to be able to achieve those efficiencies. So if the community expectation is that we maintain the staffing levels, that may be counterintuitive to actually becoming more efficient in the way in which we deliver our services.
So, councillors?
Sorry. Dan.
No, we'll go here. Just Beecham, councillor.
Through you, Mr Mayor, maybe just cut the community expectation out of your statement that you.
Council employs staffing levels commensurate to requirements for service levels. Okay, it's an
So
option.
that it doesn't drop.
Councillor Arthur.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm cautious about, I understand Councillor People's points about trying to maintain employment in all of our towns. I'm just cautious about if we say we're going to stick to the levels that we have now, if they're not exactly what we need for the work that we have. I know we have a head of works for a couple of years, but the back part of this corporate plan, we don't have a high level of confidence that we will have the work that we have. So if we don't have that work, or if they change the methodology for our grants and we receive less, we've already spoken to take out the bit where about the accountability, about saying, doing what we say we're going to do, and now we're going to say that we're going to keep staff levels, we may not be able to do it. Which I think is a very important account. Like if we say we're going to keep staff at X, Y, Z, and then there are external influences well out of our control.
Councillor Peoples.
Well, I understand what Councillor Arthur's saying there, that we've been through a lot of tough years maintaining those staff levels at about this level anyway. And up until these last couple of years, we didn't have our pandemics and everything. So we've been through those tough years and had those levels probably even greater than they are now. So I think that the staff levels and what we do as a council is very important in this economy section of our corporate plan. Play a big part in all of our five communities, and for the survival of those communities. I think that we've got to try, and it was a major transitional point at the time of amalgamation between the three councils, and that's why we ended up with the structure that we had to maintain those people in those five towns.
Councillor Gleeson.
I'm going to ask Councillor Peoples, you want to add into that measure of success, you want to add a line there that says we want to maintain our current staff numbers, something like that.
We make every endeavour to maintain our council staff numbers in our five towns.
I think it's essential that we do, carry the wording, and I'm not terribly sure of it.
Through you, Mr Mayor, can we have that comment completed so to know what we're actually looking at?
Well, it's changing a little bit as we go.
That's why I got that class, so I wasn't sure what you had decided on. Yeah.
Council employs staff levels commensurate to requirements for service levels and community expectations, which we've established could be at cross purposes to each other.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I would be happy with that, with community expectations from me.
Oh, when I drafted that, I was cognizant that whilst ideally we can, if something significant changed, the community's expectations out here are pretty pragmatic. Like if the federal government decided tomorrow that they were going to halve bags, or and we physically could not afford, then the community's expectations and our service levels would be relevant to what we can afford to do. So if we lost $4 or $5 million in revenue, that potentially is going to have a flow-on effect. We don't have that much surplus cash that we could carry our current staffing levels indefinitely. But if our revenue doesn't drop off, then the community's expectations are not that we would be going through forced redundancies or letting staff go or not replacing staff. So I do totally understand that at times the service level and community expectations could be at cross purposes, but that cross purposes could be the exact point you want to be. So I'm not sure that it's going to go all the way to what you're suggesting, but I don't think it vindicates that we're going to halve our staffing levels either. I think it's saying that if the community and what we need to do to maintain critical infrastructure and what the community expect, we maintain staffing levels for that. Now, at the moment, those two things are probably together.
Mr. Mayor, can we add a single word?
Sure,
Educated community expectations.
Educated.
So, like, the community has an expectation, but it could be based on what we've done since amalgamation, pre-amalgamation, what we've always done. It may not necessarily be the best thing for the whole of council to continue to do. Because as Councillor Peoples quite often points out, since amalgamation we have hemorrhaged cash. We can't continue to do that.
Yeah, we went through we went for about 10 or 12 years without any cash and maintaining our workforce.
Councillors, do you want to put this in here? Are we, because we could spend a lot of time wordsmithing this and then not get it across the line, are we supportive of putting something in the economy section of the plan referencing our staff level contribution to the local economy? Do we want that in or out before we go to what actually it looks like? Councillor Peoples wants to see it in, Councillor Gleeson wants to see it in.
I'd like to see something there.
Councillor Hanson wants to see it in.
Based on the discussion, I think, yeah, we need something in there.
Yep.
That's enough. I don't need to go any further. There's 4 of you, so save us all the trouble. Right. Just had to clear that up.
Plus, then, Mr. Mayor,
Informed would be better.
informed
phrase.
is maybe a better word, yeah.
Yeah.
And that is incumbent on us as councillors and the staff to make sure that the community is aware of what we can do for the rate dollars that we get with the federal funding, with the water that we've got, whether it's waste, sewerage.
That one word makes me sick right with it, Mr. Mayor.
There will always, Mr. Mayor, be sections of the community that, regardless of how informed or educated they are, they won't listen. But hopefully the majority will be able to look at whether it's our stakeholder engagement, our community engagement, and say, yep, the council have done as good as they could with what we've got.
I think we should also add for maintaining service levels. Council employs staff levels commensurate with requirements for maintaining service levels. But I know what you're going to say.
Existing service levels.
I guess I mean maintaining it ongoing, not necessarily what that service level is, because that can change over time.
Maintaining our service level.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have to be very careful because some of our asset management plans will dictate to us that we can't afford our current service levels.
Sorry?
The preliminary work coming through some of our asset management plans indicates that we're probably unable to afford the service levels that are currently there.
So take that out. Councillor Gleeson.
Mr. Mayor, I had to look up to see what that word meant. But
You're talking about commensurate.
yeah, personally, I would council employ staff level comprehensive.
That word.
Yeah, with requirements, full stop. The more you add to it, the more complicated it gets. If it's full stop, it's in proportion like that word right inside.
Do you think it was a good use of that word, Councillor Gleeson, now that you know what it
I
means?
can't even say it.
There's a lot of merit in what you've just said, Councillor.
Just,
It actually does decomplicate it
it
somewhat.
gets complicated.
Through you,
It says
Mr. Mayor.
corresponding in size or degree and in proportion. So council employs staff levels in proportion to requirements. But in proportion, there's not a flashing up words that would do.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree with Tom.
Councillor Gleeson.
Sorry, Councillor Gleeson.
Mr. Mayor.
Apologise.
Another small word.
cutting them out and you want to add them back in?
No, just because you can't employ staff, council employs staff at levels, Mitch.
No, right.
Whatever.
With requirements for, commensurate with requirements for, with requirements, okay? Councillor Pickens, I think you're probably going to want to add more.
Yeah, I don't know if it goes to the point of, maintaining the level numbers, because what I'm listening to here, it sounds like we're already thinking about, reducing staff.
Service levels is different though. So that could mean, I think, can you give us an example of what that might be? Is it like the amount of times we grade a road, for example?
And probably doing our renewals of roads. It's far greater than what we can budget for.
When you say renewals, what do you mean with renewals? Reseals?
Be a combination, depends on what type of road it is,
Resheeting of gravel or
resheeting, resealing.
So changing in service levels, I wouldn't necessarily equate to job rationalisation. It just changes what they're doing or how they go about doing what they're doing. Keep thinking. Councillor Hanson, are you happy with Councillor Gleeson's suggestion? We just, can you just hit enter or drop that down a line so it doesn't appear there on site? Thank you. That's fine. Councillor Arthur.
I'm still thinking, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Plum.
So is the full stop going after requirements?
Yes.
And then
Nothing. The rest is gone. Is the suggestion.
just go straight through the rest of it.
What's requirements mean?
What we require. Councillor Plum.
I'm still thinking, sorry.
Councillor Rogers. Oh, you said you're in full support. Sorry.
Mr Mayor, sorry to add more words again. Before requirements, can we maybe say local/regional, because local applies to Muttaburra, Aramac, Jericho, but then we need to take it into perspective on the regional level as well. The requirements, I know it simplified the bit that we had after it, but then it is quite vague and bland and open to interpretation. And I don't know whether local/regional, because sometimes most times we'll have to look at it with two lenses, like what the town needs and what the regional council area needs, and what we can do with service levels. Because it's all fine to keep the same number of staff, but they need to be in the right areas as well. Not just physical, geographical area,
No,
but
the
in work area as well.
capacity area as well. And that's an interesting point, Councillor Pickens.
I'll just add something along the lines of, council employs staff at levels commensurate with local regional requirements, giving consideration to the importance these staff are to our economies. Or to our economy.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm just wondering whether this shouldn't even be in economy and should be in the services section.
Well, services deals with our community care and water and waste and
Or even under governance.
what if instead of as a dot point, we put it in one of our strategic themes around employment? All under governance, yeah. So if you take that take the theme of governance that deals with the safe, engaged, creative, performing council and workforce that is inclusive, innovative, ethical and trusted by all levels of government.
So, sorry, Mayor, you're under governance now?
Yeah, don't type anything in yet, sorry, yeah, I'm just drafting in my mind out loud. Is that an area where we would better refer to this issue around the importance that those staff play in the fabric of the communities? Like, trusted by all levels of government is good, that's true, but the role, if we recognise the role that our staff play in the fabric of our communities as well,
Yeah, no, I want that.
rather than a arbitrary figure. We make a statement about the recognition of that, and then that be more appropriate. Well, we recognise the importance of council staff to the local economy. Councillors, total change of track, change tack. We recognise the importance of council staff to the local economy.
I think it's in what that governor said, maybe a bit in the orange too, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, well, it'll go in governance, yes.
In that orange or down here?
It'll be in the strategies.
Mr Mayor, soon we say that it's importance to the economy. Shouldn't it be under economy or communities?
I'm thinking about the same thing in my head.
Governance is more to make sure that we're going to do good, whether it be meet an audit requirement or legislative requirement or health and safety and
Yeah, community.
And instead of referring it to local economy for local communities,
That's better again.
which
We recognise the importance of
encompasses
council staff to the local community.
communities, because that encompasses your economy as well, your schools.
Really, it's about maintaining the economy. That's what it's.
If we recognise the importance of the local staff to those local communities and maintaining that's the economy anyway, isn't it? It's not saying
One aspect, I'm sure you're also concerned around maintaining student numbers at schools and maintaining the right level of education within townships. So it goes beyond just pure dollar terms.
and they're already through losing a lot in 20 staff.
Councillors, are we comfortable with that? Under community, key strategy, dot point, we recognise the importance of council staff to the local communities. Against? Good, stays. Economy is then settled. Is there anything under governance?
Excuse me, Mr Mayor. Under economy in that last document, plan for additional parking locations, should that be for Oak Street?
Correct. That's right, because it won't be on Oak Street. The most likely scenario is off Oak Street, so yes, for. Okay, thank you, Rick. Governance. And that is it. So. As we break for lunch, I would like to put the resolution, please, that Council adopts the Corporate Plan 21-6 with the following amendments as we've just discussed. Do we have a mover? Councillor Hanson, a seconder. Councillor Peoples, debate.
Sorry, I missed that. Was it Hanson?
Hanson Peoples. There being no debate, I'll put it to the vote. Just hold actually on the vote. Do I need to check something before we adopt it?
I think just the list of our strategic things here, just is in a slightly different order to the budget, but I don't think that's,
Any
so
serious?
those we covered off in the budget, that's relevant.
Those in favour? Carried? Or we shall adjourn for lunch.
So